Hello friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story in which our OP had to work under the patronage of a relative of his boss who was quite stressful to him. But here's how it all ended. We'll tell in our first story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Overtime is no longer allowed? Okay. The players. Fake names. Owner, Jack. Direct supervisor, Will. Colleague, Paula. Myself. Backstory. I began working payroll at 16 years old. I'm incredibly good with numbers as well as dealing with clients. Suffice to say, I'm wonderful at what I do. Many years ago, I began working with a very small payroll company with only 4 workers. I really liked the owner, Jack, and honestly still do. He's a decent dude. I also really like the work and the clients. However, I was not fond of Paula or Will. Paula missed so much work, and I'm pretty sure no one has 5 grandfathers that died within 3 years. But she doesn't figure much into the story, other than to showcase that she was not a good employee. Will was the worst supervisor I ever had. He took smoke breaks every 30 minutes. He always thought he was right. He was very racist/sexist, and boy, he loved to talk. There were times where he was monologuing to a client who'd hung up 30 minutes prior. No, I'm not exaggerating. However, he was the owner's father-in-law whose prior business went bankrupt. Basically, he was never going to be fired. In that work setting, I absolutely shined. I was the best employee by a huge margin. So one day, Will calls me into his office and lets me know that I'm getting too much overtime. This was a small business and I needed to be careful. Now, I never took much overtime. Overall, I usually had around 2 to 5 minutes by the end of the week, simply because I lived 5 minutes away and clocked in when I got in and settled, even if I was a minute early. I agreed to the new rule with a bit of glee. From then on, if I got in early, I would get ready to clock in and then play on my phone or read for a minute before clocking in. This drove Will absolutely crazy. After I did this for a few days, he called me back into his office. He told me about the good old days when people would work even without pay in order to excel at life. I politely reminded him that we were a payroll company, so he should be aware that it's illegal to not pay workers for time worked. From that point on, he would simply mutter under his breath and glare at me. The aftermath. After 3 to 4 weeks, the owner, Jack, calls me into his office. Apparently, Will had been complaining about me about how I wasn't working hard and was being disrespectful. I explained the situation to him and pointed out that no clients had ever been unhappy with me, that I showed up to work every day on time, and that I had the most duties with the least problems. Basically, I reminded him I was his only good employee. Jack was a little shocked/annoyed that my tiny amount of overtime was the reason I was sitting in his office. He told me that if I needed it, I could have up to 30 minutes of overtime without needing it to be approved. But he also gave me a small raise for being such a hard worker. Finally, he told me that if Will ever gave me another rule that I disagreed with, I should go directly to him. Jack then called Will into his office, and I heard quite a bit of yelling. When Will came back out, he looked like he'd just sucked a lemon. It's my fondest memory of Will. Management. Supervisor doesn't like you. Employee. I'm the only one here who does their job. Management. Point taken. Carry on. Love it. And our second story. Choosing beggar family won't leave our house. My dad had a friend from middle school who now had a family and was going to visit North Carolina for vacation. They invited themselves over to my grandparents' house to stop by for a few minutes before continuing on their trip. This is how they ended up staying for 2 days before we kicked them out. So my dad had a friend from middle school. Let's call him Mike. Mike lived in New Jersey near my father, and they were friends and went to school together. So it makes sense that him and his family come visit because they haven't seen my father in a while. Here's the thing. My dad wasn't there. He was in Colorado on his own vacation to visit his other friend. So why would they still come visit? This baffled us, but it's great to have company since we lived in the middle of nowhere and had this big house all to ourselves. Here are the characters in the story. Me, OP, my mom, Mom, my sister, Sarah, my grandmother, GM, my grandfather, GP, my dad's friend, Mike, my dad's friend's wife, Karen, Mike and Karen's son, age 12, Kevin, Mike and Karen's daughter, 16, Kevina. It was time for the family to arrive. We still didn't know why they were coming since the road to North Carolina was an hour out of the way, unless they're trying to get a free vacation out of our house's amenities, pool, jacuzzi, etc. They came here in their little car with Kevina driving, almost hitting our car in the driveway. They came inside, and within 5 minutes, everyone was in the pool. Barely any introduction or manners. Just got in the pool, basically. After a while of being in the pool, I got to know Kevin. Kevin was a special guy. A classic Kevin. Since I was bored out of my mind, since I didn't have any friends with me, I hung out with him for a bit. We played Minecraft and did other stuff, and he kept on trying to pick up my sister, age 5 at the time. My mother politely said, "Please do not pick up 5. She's too heavy for you to carry." He didn't care. He did it a few times after anyway. So yeah, that was Kevin, not the brightest guy. I didn't really know Kevina that well. It was nearing 6 p.m. Karen and Mike were out of the pool and they were talking crap about being hungry. GP asked if they had lunch. Karen said no, but the kids had fruit snacks on the way here. Seriously? Feed your damn kids, and don't expect dinner if you told us that you're only going to stop by for a few minutes. We ended up ordering Domino's. Since we live in literally the middle of nowhere, we had to drive 20 minutes to the nearest Domino's and pick up pizza. I always rode with my grandfather in the car because I liked it. On the way there, he was getting a bit PO'd because I'm sure a 64-year-old man doesn't want to be picking up pizza for a family he barely knows and has seen seldom of the past 20 years. We got back and ate pizza. Me and Kevin played Minecraft in my world, and yes, he exploded my Minecraft city with TNT. I don't particularly care. I'm not a hardcore Minecraft gamer back then. We watched a mediocre movie, then went to bed. The whole family refused to sleep in rooms with any of us. We had to rearrange the whole bedroom layout, which was a pain in the butt, but we eventually went to sleep. I wake up at the ripe time of 7 a.m. I look out my window and see Kevin and Kevina in the pool already, Mike and Karen in the jacuzzi. It's 7 a.m. I walk downstairs to my fuming grandfather, who didn't even know they were sleeping over. He, my mom, and GM were in the kitchen formulating a plan. They came up with a lie that they had to pick up a new dishwasher in the city, which was about 50 miles away. What did they say? "We'll come with you. It's no problem." "No, you'll have to leave now," said my grandfather, who was actually PO'd at the time. After 2 hours of wasting our time, they finally left. They came back twice because they forgot stuff. I'm sure they stole a few things too. We drove to the seafood market and Dunkin' Donuts for some food. We leave the parking lot and see their car driving away from North Carolina. My GM screamed, "Duck!" as their car passed us, since they knew that the city was also the other way on the road. What does this story mean? Make sure that choosing beggars leave your house at the time that they promise to leave. Sorry if it was too long. I even cut some things out. This wasn't even half of their antics. And our final story. I know the owner. So I'm an on-call and response engineer dealing mostly with fire and electrical safety. I've got a lot of really good customers, and one of these is a nightclub, which I often frequent as a customer too. I seldom pay on the door, even though I always offer to pay, and I've even tried forcing my money on the door staff. I wait patiently at the bar and understand that we all have our turn, and when I'm there, I'm a customer like all the others, even though many of the bar staff know me and will acknowledge me. So this one time I was in there and was waiting at the bar to be served when the owner came up and shook my hand and said hi. I asked him if he wanted a drink and he declined. Yes, I pay for drinks and will always offer him one, even though he could quite literally walk behind the bar and get his own drink. After all, he owns the place. It was my turn and the bar staff member asked what I wanted. I was just about to tell him my order when a student Karen waved her 10-pound note, shouted that it was her turn next, and that she'd wanted 2 of a particular drink. The bar staff member was quite frank and told her she was serving me next and that I'd been there first. Karen wasn't happy with this and said that she knew the owner and she'd get me barred for queue jumping and the staff member sacked for not serving her in turn. She then spent at least 2 minutes saying how she went to his house all the time and that she'd been to his parties. I wasn't actually that bothered, to be honest, as I was in the middle of a conversation with the owner about some work he wanted me to do over the coming weeks, and I said I was okay to wait a little bit. Karen's face lit up because she'd won, she thought. I said to the owner I didn't want to cause a fuss. The bar staff poured her order, passed it to her, and promptly took her money, then gave her change back. You see, this nightclub on this particular night had a promotion that a particular drink was £1 before 11 and £3 after. Karen had wanted to jump the queue to save £2 a drink, but what she hadn't realized was that in the time she'd been arguing, the clock had ticked past 11 and the staff member gave her £4 change rather than the £8 she'd been expecting. Bar staff have no control over this, as once the till clocks tick to 11, unless the order's already started, the price changes at the cash server side. Karen kicked off and said, "You've given me the wrong change," at which point the bar staff member pointed to the clock at the end of the bar and noted it was after 11. The receipt also showed the order was placed after 11. Karen then started getting very loud, much to the point that security was called and she was told to leave. She called her mates over and they left. She never did drink her £5 drink, and she clearly never did know the owner because she'd have known that all the time I was talking to him. Meanwhile, I didn't even realize that my drink had been placed on the bar, and when I finally go to order it, I was told as such. When I asked her how much, I was told, "Don't worry about it." The fact the owner was there was the best. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.